Markle's ego is wildly out of control, and it was on display in Australia. And then I would argue extreme measures. She has a quote that is so unhinged, so diluted, so massively ego filled that it's just crazy to think that people, women, paid $3,000 for Meghan Markle to say, I've spent all my life investing in women. Can I finally invest in me? Oh my gosh, the delusion is real. The narcissism, it is a clinical diagnosis, and her ego is out of control. And of course, it's going to lead to her downfall. So guys, we are going to get into this latest today. But if you haven't been to Royal News Network before, my name is Brittany. I do provide compelling royal commentary, so please hit that subscribe button. I'd absolutely love to have you back. So looking at Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's trip to Australia, there have been a lot of, let's say, mixed reaction. Harry and Meghan, and I'm sure members of their team, think it was a rip-roaring success. They got great love down under and all the different things. However, I think a more realistic perspective is mixed to negative about this trip. So just to give you an overall synopsis, let's say, of what happened and how this trip is being perceived, Harry and Meghan went under the auspices of this is private and business, but a bit philanthropic, and then proceeded to do a series of cosplay royal events where they were very much mimicking the royals and the monarchy in the type of visits they were doing to a hospital, to a women's shelter, to an art gallery, and a couple of other places. They even met with victims of the recent Bondi Beach terrorism attack. And they did some things for the Invictus Games. But then they also proceeded to do a lot of, let's say, business things. Harry spoke at a conference that you had to pay for that he got a cut of the money from. Meghan Markle went on Top Chef, where I'm sure she got some sort of paycheck. And then she also did a women's event, which has been suggested that she got paid $250,000 for. We don't know if that's true, but that's been sort of the suggestion. And if it's true, it's number one, disgusting. But second of all, that conference, when we've looked at pictures and images of it, just looks simply very lame, very underwhelming, and really, really pathetic. But sort of the big thing that has gotten people as they're considering this tour is, well, I mean, it looked good, but it's the finances that are getting people tripped up, because they're looking at this going, well, you looked charitable, yet at the same time, you're meeting victims of terrorism in Bondi Beach, Jews who were victims of an Islamic attack. You're wearing a blue and white striped shirt, which you could say harkens back to the outfits that some Jews were required to wear in concentration camps, and then proceeding to merch your outfit. Actually, I think merching has been the biggest trap for Meghan Markle on this trip, because the reality is, and I think what people are seeing more and more from Harry and Meghan as they really think about this trip is going, you were doing charity, you claim, yet you're also merching your outfit. So you're wearing this outfit and yet also attempting to make money from it. So are you there in these charitable endeavors to actually do charity, or are you there just to merch the outfit? And that's why royals don't merch. That's why they don't do influencery style things, celebrity style things, because it blurs the line between what is charity and what is promotion. Because when Meghan Markle goes to a charity and then promotes her fashion, it no longer is about charity, it's about fashion promotion. And that's a very distinct line, of course, to draw. But it's this women's event. And of course, there was a big hubbubaloo about it in the beginning, how much people were paying, how sort of weird it was, how kind of the resort was in bad shape, and all these sorts of things. But it's the other bits we got from it. And in particular, like I said, the quote from the beginning. So let's look at the article from the Daily Mail talking about this super fan event. Meghan tells the audience that paid $3,000 a head, her super fans, quote, I've spent all my life investing in women. Can I finally invest in me? Think about that quote and the narcissistic ego you would have to have, because what Meghan Markle is basically saying here is that I've invested in all of you because I've invested in women. So now you are obligated to invest in me, i.e. buy my crap. That's what she's telling them. And Meghan Markle, we are under no obligation at all to invest in you because you have allegedly invested in them. I don't feel a smidge of your investment because you actively encourage bullies who have harassed my family. You actively bully your own family. You actively bully your staff, allegedly. You are an active bully, allegedly, which I have to say for legal reasons. And I don't believe at all that you have ever in your entire life actually invested in women. I don't believe it at all. You're a mean girl. In high school, I have absolutely firm belief that Meghan Markle would have been the mean girl of the class. She would have been the one who kind of goes, "Ooh, who would have known you could wear pants that tight?" Like I can't even think of something because I'm not good at insulting in that way because I don't even think that way. But she would be one of those type of people who would she would be very subtle about it, but she would insult you at the same time as complimenting you. That is Meghan. That's the type of person Meghan is. She would be belittling you in ways, backbiting, all these sorts of things. Meghan Markle has never, for one iota, ever invested in women. In fact, I think she's sort of the antithesis of it. Because why didn't she invest in Catherine, the Princess of Wales? Why didn't she invest in her niece? And why, again, the ego to believe and say to a group of women who, by the way, have invested in you by paying you $250,000 to speak vain and vapid nonsense to them, go up to them and go, "I've spent all my life investing in women. Can I finally invest in me? Me, 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 me." It's all about Meghan. And she's so incredibly deluded. And she so fits the clinical definition of narcissism. Again, guys, she has no idea how idiotic, how disconnected, how dumb she sounds, and how most people would find that, like I do, incredibly offensive. Who's to say that you have invested in women, Meghan Markle? Just because you have supported a couple of women's charity doesn't mean you're investing in women, and doesn't mean the rest of us feel it. And that, can I finally invest in me, is pressure on the audience going, well, since I'm investing in me, you need to be investing in me too. Can you imagine? But let's look at somebody else, because I was reading the beginning of this article and I was like, you can just feel again the narcissism. So she apparently told the crowd, in her experience in the public eye has been very difficult. Oh, you mean like the press doesn't automatically just, and the people and the public don't just automatically like love and embrace you as you think they should? It was actually interesting. I was listening to a video, and I've heard this before. Nobody's smarter than the internet. And what this means basically is that nobody is smarter than the collective wisdom in some ways of mankind. That's why they have that option on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. Is that right? Yeah. Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? You can poll the crowd of the audience. Now, granted, not all the time is this correct, but the idea is that the internet is an analog of everything people have done publicly. And so you are not smarter, Meghan Markle, than all of us who have watched you endlessly throughout the years and have seen the lies, the hypocrisy. And I'm sorry, but you're not really a bright person. You're not smart. You're not intelligent in a lot of ways because you can't actually speak intelligently. You can't actually project a level of intelligence. And so to somebody like me and others, I think, I listen to you and I go, I mean, it sounds pretty, but as an intellectual person, as somebody who analyzes things, there is no depth there. It's actually interesting, when I go to church and these sorts of things and I listen to sermons or stuff, and maybe I'm visiting churches or we're trying different churches and those sorts of things, I'm listening, and you can tell sometimes whether somebody is actually telling you something deep and profound and moving, something that challenges you, and somebody who's just up there to speak pretty nonsense. Because it happens in a variety of things. It happens in speeches, it happens in books, it happens all sorts of places. And those people can generate a bit of a crowd, but it doesn't technically last usually super long, and it doesn't last into, let's say, history, because at the end of the day, you're not actually saying anything. And the crazy thing is that she thinks she's saying something deep or profound, but your criticism, Meghan Markle, is a result of how your public behavior doesn't align with your deluded, narcissistic vision of yourself. Those things are wildly disconnected. And because you cannot actually meld those two together because you're too narcissistic and controlling to actually be your true self because you hate yourself in many ways, I think that Meghan has to put up this projection that's not the real her. And so we all clock her as fake. We all know people in our own lives that we watch and we go, you know what, they're kind of sort of fake. That's Meghan. And again, that collective wisdom of the internet, of seeing somebody for so long and going, it doesn't track. It doesn't work. Meghan, you're not smarter than the internet. You're much dumber than it. And if you could just actually be honest with yourself, if you could just be honest with the public about the fact that you're just a greedy brat who just wants money and just wants to be endlessly indulged by the world so that you can feel fulfilled, even though that won't fill the empty chasm in your heart, you know what? You would be a Kardashian. You know what? You might make $1 billion. But it's that sort of dichotomy. It's that friction between her reality and delusions that means that Meghan Markle, by necessity, is not going to be trusted by the public. We are going to call her out on her BS, and that's her difficulty. It's not difficult being in the public eye. It's difficult for her to be in the public eye and not be absolutely beloved as she believes she should be, because she is a perfect specimen of humankind. And that's narcissism, ladies and gentlemen. That is narcissism, to not be able to see yourself. What Meghan can't do, because she's not funny, she's not witty, she's not really anything, because she's so controlling. Because part of, I think, having a level of wit, having a level of, I think, humor and those sorts of things is being able to make fun of yourself and understanding what doesn't work about yourself, or how you're kind of different and weird or whatever that makes you funny and engaging. So it's even that with stand-up humor. I think of there's a Christian guy named John Christ who is able to perfectly sort of poke at Christian culture in a way, because he's actually Christian and is actually in the culture. Yes, he's had some difficulties if you're familiar with the John Christ story, but he's able to make fun of it because he understands the culture and understands how sometimes how we present ourselves doesn't always mix. He has like a really funny bit about Chick-fil-A and these sorts of things. And a lot of humor is like that. I'll come across a humor and it's a guy, I think he's Pakistani, so he's able to really make fun of Pakistani culture. And I don't get where all the humor is coming from, but I understand it's funny because it's self-deprecating. And Meghan can't self-deprecate because she has too much of an ego too. She's such a narcissist. And she's not a particularly smart one. And so, like, there's a lot of narcissists out there who are quite successful. And she's successful in some ways, but not as successful as she could be, because she has this weird mix of absolute narcissism, wild control issues, and not being as smart as she thinks she is. And it's just hilarious to see. And then she says, and to pull out the full quote here, being in the public eye has been very difficult, but that people's criticism of her had more to do with their own projections. Meghan Markle, I'm not projecting anything. I just see through you. You are not particularly adept at hiding your true nature. That's why you were a crappy actress and still remain a really crappy actress. Is because I look at you, I watch you, I see you, and I kind of go, and this is a true story. I'm sort of so bummed I did not start my channel when she first came on the scene, or had my channel when she first came on the scene, because my first initial thought when I saw of her, and I heard the story because I was like, how in the world did Harry even meet this woman? My first initial thought is that she's a woman who had a 2-second interaction with him, somehow morphed it into a relationship because she's this D-list actress and she's leveraging it to get her 10 minutes of fame. That's what I thought that was. And while it wasn't true, I was on with clocking her as D-list. She's still in a D-list mentality. Meghan Markle, that is not projection. That's just reality. I'm not projecting anything. I'm just too smart for you. That's like the way to say it. I'm too smart. I see through you. I see your machinations, and it's not impressive, honey. Like, you might think you're pulling some Machiavellian stunt out there. You're really, really not. And it's insane for her to think so. Do some people maybe have projections? Sure. But really, all of us are seeing her lies, her hypocrisy, her treatment of other human beings. And we're going, you're not a nice person. You're not really necessarily, let's say, a good person. And because of that, we have a certain conclusion of you. And because you are not a truth teller, we cannot rely on you to be truthful. The internet digs and digs and digs and digs and digs, and we pull out lies. Or people go on the record and refute her lies. Because, Meghan, we weren't born yesterday. We're not that stupid. Yes, those people in the audience, those women, might be rather stupid because they're listening to you and they think you have something profound to say and you really don't. This, again, guys, is a lesson of actually listening to people. Read. Don't fall for somebody as vain, vacuous, nonsensical, inane as Meghan Markle. It's pitiful that women think this woman has anything of interest and depth to say, because she doesn't. And that's part of the reason why there's such an anti-Meghan movement. It's because it's necessary to call her out on her BS, because she won't do it. People say ignore her, and I agree, ignore her. However, Meghan Markle, again, the narcissist that she is, she will constantly continue to lie unless you call her out on it. And she can't hide. This woman will lie forever. She'll hide forever. She'll hide her true nature the best she can, because she doesn't want people to see it. And so you have to almost basically fight against it by highlighting who she truly is. Because if she got her way, we'd all be living in this insane asylum with her, and we'd just be clapping along to this speech as if it's the greatest one since the Gettysburg Address. So it goes on to say, said the last decade, during which she celebrated happy moments such as the wedding and the birth of her 2 children, have been tainted by vicious attacks. You know, you were a freaking princess and you left. You were a freaking princess and you left because you didn't get enough money. And here's the other ugly thing. The despicable thing about her, the disgusting thing about her, is that the reason she's been allowed to get away with a decent amount of this is leveraging her race. It's disgusting. It's like, it just makes your skin crawl that this woman has claimed and cried racism so much, when all that's been done to her, for the most part, I would say 99% of the time, when all that's been done to Meghan is to hold up a mirror and go, what you're saying doesn't match with factual truth. What you're saying doesn't mesh with what we know happened in this particular event. And also, there are credible allegations now over the course of a decade, young lady, of you bullying staff members, particularly, by the way, even though she says she's invested in women, particularly, she has been accused of bullying women. Why? Because, my personal opinion, she is a bully. She's a mean girl. And honestly, she only attracts really, truly other mean girls because they vibe with that energy. And all her friends, I'm sure, are mean girls. Any of her friends, I would try to keep them away with the 10-foot pole, honestly, because they are all like her. Because those are the only people who can be friends with her. This is why Meghan Markle did not jive with Catherine, with Zara, I'm sure with Autumn. She didn't jive with them, not because they were trying to exclude her, but because she was a mean girl. And they're like, stay away, woman. And I talked about this in a different video, and I think it bears repeating. The toxicity that surrounds Meghan Markle exists because of Meghan Markle. That's not normal to have that much toxicity in your life and to have such a toxic public persona. But she has it because she herself is toxic, ladies and gentlemen. She is the toxic one. And because she's toxic, she brings in this toxicity into all aspects of her life, the people she works with, these sorts of things. It can't be avoided because she is toxic. And when you're toxic like that, it infuses into every aspect of your life. There's just no way about it. Meghan has said motherhood has taught her to have perspective and patience, something she needed given what her life is like. Honestly, I don't think she has perspective or patience. I don't think she's a particularly motherly woman. I think we will definitely hear mommy dearest stories from Meghan Markle there. And then this is sort of the crazy thing. And we saw this in Meghan's video wrapping up Australia, is that Harry was also in attendance. Why? Because he must worship the ground she walks on. And he rose to his feet as his wife entered the room and greeted her with a kiss and helped her onto the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, it's weird. Throughout the entire Australia trip, it looked like Prince Harry was basically laying, jackets down in front of her feet, rolling out a carpet for her, making sure her feet didn't touch any of the peasants. That's narcissism. That is not love, ladies and gentlemen. That is control. That is, I don't even know how to describe it exactly, but it just gives me the ick factor. It's all very, you could say, performative. You must perform these tasks so it looks like you love me and it looks like I love you. But really, it's only about Harry loving Meghan. She said this constantly. He loves me so much. Honey, do you love him? I don't think you do. I honestly think Meghan doesn't love Harry. I don't think she does. She loves his title, his money, his status, everything he's given her, but she doesn't actually love him as a person. And how do I know this? Because she never validated him as a person. He had to change everything about his life to please her. That is not love, ladies and gentlemen. That is not love.
Imagine standing in front of an audience of women who paid $3,000 each just to breathe the same air as you, only to look them in the eye and utter a phrase so breathtakingly self-absorbed it leaves the room momentarily paralyzed. I've spent all my life investing in women. Can I finally invest in me? It is a statement that defies basic social awareness, exposing a psychological framework so deeply insulated by ego that it begs a fundamental question. What happens when a public figure's manufactured illusion of altruism finally collides with the collective, unyielding intellect of the modern internet? Welcome back to Real News Network. I'm Brittany, and today we are dissecting the fascinating, high-stakes psychology behind the royal family's most polarizing figures. If you want to stay ahead of the curve with compelling royal commentary that doesn't pull any punches, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now. And make sure to turn on those notifications so you never miss an update. We have a lot of ground to cover today, because what just went down in Australia isn't just a PR misstep. It might just be the definitive beginning of the end for a carefully crafted empire of self-promotion. To truly understand the gravity of this moment, we have to look at Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's recent trip down under, a tour that their internal team undoubtedly classified as a rip-roaring success. They walked the crowds, smiled for the cameras, and soaked in the sunshine. But behind the glossy exterior, the reality of this trip was mixed, if not outright negative. The public is no longer buying the performance, and the cracks in the narrative are beginning to look like canyons. The entire excursion was framed under the vague, high-minded auspices of a private business and philanthropic tour. But what actually occurred was a series of carefully staged, highly calculated cosplay royal events. They visited a hospital, dropped by a women's shelter, and toured an art gallery, meticulously mimicking the exact structure, tone, and visual styling of official monarchy visits. They even met with the deeply grieving victims of the tragic Bondi Beach attack. But where a true royal visit is designed to shine a singular, selfless spotlight on the community, this tour was quietly serving a much different master, commercial monetization. While performing these seemingly charitable acts, the commercial machinery was running at full steam. Harry spoke at a highly exclusive conference where attendees had to pay premium ticket prices, a venture he reportedly received a direct cut of. Meghan made an appearance on Top Chef, undoubtedly attached to a lucrative paycheck. And then, of course, there was the women's event, a gathering where rumors swirled that Meghan was paid an astronomical $250,000 just to speak. Whether that exact figure is verified or not, the optics alone are devastating. When you look at the photos from that conference, it didn't look like a ground-shifting cultural moment. It looked underwhelming, sparsely attended, and remarkably thin on substance. But the real trap for Meghan on this trip wasn't just the underwhelming venues. It was the phenomenon of merching. During their visit with the victims of the devastating Bondi Beach attack, a deeply sensitive meeting with people recovering from unspeakable tragedy, Meghan chose to wear a blue and white striped shirt. Almost immediately, observers pointed out the striking, highly insensitive resemblance to the historical uniforms worn in concentration camps. But the controversy didn't stop at bad taste, because simultaneously, the outfit was being actively marketed and merched online. This is the exact reason why actual working royals do not merch their clothing. They do not engage in influencer-style promotions because it completely destroys the barrier between genuine charitable intent and commercial exploitation. The moment you use a charity visit to promote a fashion brand, the event ceases to be about the victims. It becomes a highly subsidized commercial for your wardrobe. Which brings us back to that unbelievable quote from the $3,000 a head superfan event. I've spent all my life investing in women. Can I finally invest in me? Let those words sink in for a moment. To stand before a crowd of women who have literally just invested thousands of dollars to hear you speak and suggest that you are the one who has been doing the investing is a level of psychological projection that borders on the clinical. The underlying, manipulative message is clear. I have supposedly given so much to your gender that you are now morally obligated to buy whatever product, lifestyle brand, or narrative I am selling next. But the public doesn't owe Meghan Markle an investment.